Joining me now live to discuss the ongoing COVID situation in Greater Sydney is the New South Wales opposition leader, Chris Minns. Chris, we're seeing this potential mid-September extension of this lockdown. It's something that the Premier said today that it won't be the middle of September. But realistically, do you think that we are looking at an extended lockdown situation here?
Well, almost certainly from the original deadline, that's right. And it's hard to know when it will end. Obviously, that's dependent on the case numbers, how people are complying with the existing health orders, bending that curve. But it looks like we're in for a tough couple of weeks, particularly maybe even longer in Sydney. And we really need that roadmap up and running so that people can understand the length of time that we could potentially be locked in.
One of the themes I noticed from today's press conference was that household gathering seems to remain an issue in parts of Greater Sydney. The Chief Health Officer, Dr. Kerry Chant, looked almost exasperated, Chris, saying that message again, that we can't gather in households at the moment. Given this, does it need to be harder? Does there need to be stricter rules in place?
The rules are pretty strict, and I think a lot of people in Sydney now are scratching their heads saying we've had weeks and weeks of this. Everybody's tried diligently to spread the message, make sure it was communicated in clear and unambiguous ways to everyone right across Sydney and the region. So I don't have a lot of sympathy at this point. I mean, if family gatherings are going ahead, they shouldn't be, and the rules are in place for a reason. The people that will be most directly affected are those that the disease is spread to. So you're imperiling your own health and those of your loved ones if you continue to have family gatherings. We just can't do it, or this lockdown will continue to go on and on.
And so given that, though, do you think that there needs to go a step further? Should there be curfews? Should there be more restrictions in place? I know that they're already harsh, as you said, but how do you clamp down on this?
Well, the rules are pretty straightforward. The fines are pretty oppressive, particularly for those on fixed incomes, potentially those that live in Western Sydney. So I would expect more enforcement and the police to, fine people that breach these laws. Like we just, one group, one family gathering, one meeting of friends could potentially exacerbate this for weeks and weeks. So I know it's harsh and restrictive, and I understand that people are hurting and doing it difficult. They are in a difficult period, but if these continue to take place, then we're going to have an indefinite lockdown in Sydney, and it's hard enough already.
Yeah, it certainly is. And you've been on the front foot. You've been calling for the return of JobKeeper, but that request has once again been rejected. What more do we need to see then in terms of disaster payments if it's not JobKeeper?
Yeah, look, it seems crazy to me. I'm not sure if politics has gotten in the way here, but there seems to be a universal belief from the political leadership in New South Wales that JobKeeper is needed in New South Wales. Now, if it's right that we're in the final part of the COVID pandemic and that vaccination rates will increase as will supply in the back quarter of 2021, well, why would you stumble at the final hurdle when financial support is needed right now? No business and no job should be lost because somebody has done the right thing, listened to their own government about complying with the health orders, and then is at the brink of closing their doors permanently. That shouldn't happen. I think JobKeeper was a great success of the federal government, and I'm imploring Josh Frydenberg to bask in that success and reintroduce it into Australia's largest state.
What's the feedback you're getting in your local area from business owners? These disaster payments that are on the table right now, is that going to be enough to see them through what could be an extended lockdown?
No, it's not. That's what they believe. It's a complicated ad hoc situation where they have to go through a different government department, a state government department to access these grants. Many of them believe it won't be enough for them to survive. If it is, it'll be just barely enough. And with an indeterminate timeline in terms of when the lockdown will be lifted, it's a very anxious wait for tens of thousands of businesses in Sydney right now. If JobKeeper was in place, that anxiety would be gone. I'm sure confidence would come back to the economy and we'd have a brighter outlook. Before this lockdown, the Australian economy was due to grow at 4.75%. That's because supply chains were in place and labour was ready to go when there was pent-up demand in the economy. They're putting all of that at risk, not by bringing back this signature policy that served the country so well for the last 18 months.
Let's talk about the protests that we saw in the city over the weekend. It's now emerged that potentially a second rally is planned for this weekend. Have you got a message for the community?
Don't do it. I mean, this is the definition of insanity. It will achieve the exact opposite of what you're hoping for. A rally in Sydney that is a super spreader event will lead to a longer lockdown in Sydney, the exact opposite of what the protest organisers wanted. I'm hoping that they see common sense. Now, there will be some people in our community that under all circumstances won't comply with these government orders, but if there's sensible people listening to this, if you've got family or friends that are tempted to go, tell them not to. The implications of them turning up to that rally could be the opposite of what they hope and what we need in New South Wales now. We want this lockdown to be as short as possible, so do not go to that protest.
Yeah, it certainly didn't turn out to be a great protest over the weekend, Chris Minns. Just finally, I want to ask you about schools. Some health experts are saying that schools should be considered an essential service. It's having a significant impact on children's mental health, not being able to have that face-to-face learning. Do you think that schools should be considered essential?
Well, look, we're open to a discussion about that, and we would certainly talk to the government about that. But we need vaccination rates lifted amongst the teaching fraternity to begin with. More than half of the teachers in the public system in New South Wales are under 40 and therefore haven't, up until the last couple of weeks, had access to any vaccination. So that needs to be the essential prerequisite before we can speak about changes to school behaviour. But look, we just want this over with. So creative solutions we're open to a discussion about because Sydney's hurting at the moment.
Chris Minns, thank you for joining me.
My pleasure.